everyone, this is Elena and welcome back to another episode on the Immigration People's YouTube channel. So earlier on, Kay and I have produced two very detailed videos covering about the most common types of work passes in Singapore, namely the S-Pass, Employment Pass, Personalised Employment Pass, and the Overseas Networks and Expertise Pass. If you happen to be researching about any of these work passes and have not catched these two videos yet, be sure to check them out on our YouTube channel. And in today's episode, I'm gonna cover all the most frequently asked questions about work passes in Singapore. Without further ado, let's get into it. What is the difference between an S-Pass and an Employment Pass? An S-Pass and Employment Pass are the two most common types of work passes in Singapore. An Employment Pass, also known as EP, is usually for foreign professionals, managers and executives with good education qualifications meeting the eligibility criteria set forth by the Ministry of Manpower. Whereas for S-Pass is for mid-level skilled workers, technicians and specialists. Now, the biggest difference between the two passes is not only the salary, but also for the employers, they are subject to a foreign quota and levy in order to hire an S-Pass employee. So, if a company wishes to employ an S-Pass candidate, their company needs to meet a minimum number of local employees before they can proceed with the hiring. Can an S-Pass holder be converted to an Employment Pass holder? Yes, provided if the S-Pass holder meets the minimum requirements to qualify for an Employment Pass. Now, you can actually use the self-assessment tool provided by MOM to gauge if the S-Pass candidate actually meets the minimum requirements for Employment Pass in the areas of job position, salary, and qualifications. What is the typical processing time frame for an Employment Pass application? Now, after you have submitted your Employment Pass application to the Ministry of Manpower, you will receive an acknowledgement slip, and in the slip, it will indicate that the processing time is about 3 weeks, barring any unforeseen circumstances. We also have to take into consideration the additional time needed to verify all tertiary certifications. This is because the Ministry of Manpower has mandated that all diploma certifications, bachelor's degree, master's degree has to be verified by one of MOM's approved verification agency. And this time to process the education verification will take about 3 weeks to 4 weeks depending on the university. As an immigration company who processes so many EP applications on a daily basis, we usually recommend our clients to get the process started at least 3 months in advance before they wish to get their EP approved. This is because we have to take into consideration the preparation time, if any of the documents need to be translated, the verification time required for the education certificates, and the actual submission and waiting for MOM's approval. You don't want to be in a position whereby you need to be here to start work, but your EP is still pending with MOM. Is it possible to extend the validity period of the in-principle approval of an Employment Pass? Yes, it is. Typically, the in-principle approval, also known as IPA, of an Employment Pass is 6 months' time. So the Ministry of Manpower actually gives the applicant 6 months to actually enter Singapore and complete their formalities. 6 months is actually sufficient for most applicants to prepare for their relocation to Singapore. However, if you find yourself requiring more than 6 months, we can actually do a one-time extension with the MOM. However, do note that it is still subjected to MOM's discretion on the approval and how long they are going to approve you for. What factors have led to the continuous increase in S-Pass salaries over time? So there are many factors into consideration, and let's take a look at the official statement from MOM. So here MOM says that they will continue to raise the qualifying salaries and levies for S-Pass holders to uplift the quality of S-Pass holders to the top 1/3 of our local associate professionals and technicians. So in other words, as pass holders are getting more and more competitive, and Singapore also want to increase the standard of foreign workers, technicians and specialists in Singapore. And most importantly, because the government is always in favor of local employment, which refers to our Singapore citizens and permanent residents, the government wants to ensure that the locals' jobs are protected at a minimum wage level. Which is why if you today are a S-Pass holder and you do not want to continuously be subjected to the changes and increasing qualifying salaries, perhaps it's time for you to consider converting to a PR. This will offer you the much needed stability in your career here in Singapore. What is the process for changing jobs while holding onto an employment pass in Singapore? It is as usual. If you're on an employment pass with company A, you can still proceed to hold interviews with other companies if you wish to change jobs. But do not resign first and do not have your pass cancelled first. Because if you are on an employment pass and your existing HR cancels your EP, you are only allowed to stay in Singapore for another 90 days legally. And if you stay in Singapore beyond these 90 days without another new work pass, you will have to leave the country until you receive the in-principle approval of your new employment pass. So what people normally do is they will proceed to apply for a new employment pass under the prospective employer. Once they receive the IPA of their new employment pass, then they proceed to resign and have their pass cancelled. This way, you minimize the transition period between your old employment pass and new employment pass, and you do not risk having to leave the country because you do not have a valid stay in Singapore. Is it possible to apply for an S-Pass while holding on to a visit pass in Singapore? Yes, it is possible. There are no requirements that the foreign candidate needs to be physically in Singapore at the time of the work pass application. So the company who's applying for the work pass can submit the application to MOM even if the foreign candidate is overseas. Can someone on the work pass legally work for multiple employers simultaneously? Now this very much depends on the type of work pass that you are holding. If you are holding onto a work permit, an S-Pass or an employment pass, then you cannot work for multiple employers at the same time. You can only work for the company that sponsored your work pass. However, if you are on a personalized employment pass or the overseas networks and expertise pass, then you are allowed to work for multiple companies at the same time. This is provided that you have also gained consent from your existing employers and they also allow you to work for other companies. Can an employment pass holder legally hold a director position in another company other than the company that applied the pass for them? It is not possible before you get the letter of consent, which is LOC, approved by the Ministry of Manpower. So for any employment pass holders in Singapore, if you wish to hold a director position in another company other than the one who sponsored your employment pass, you have to apply for a letter of consent with the Ministry of Manpower. And the condition is that the second company that you will hold directorship is also related to the original company that sponsored your employment pass. Are work pass holders in Singapore required to contribute to the Central Provident Fund? In short, the answer is no. If you have not heard about the Central Provident Fund, also known as the CPF, it is a mandatory social security savings scheme contributed by both the employers and local employees. It is meant to serve and meet the requirements of our retirement, healthcare, and housing needs of Singapore citizens and PRs. So if you are a foreign worker in Singapore, you are not subjected to contribute to CPF. What factors influence the success rate for an employment pass application? Now, there are many factors to be taken into consideration for an employment pass application to be approved. So usually the Ministry of Manpower, they look at two aspects. One is the foreign candidate's credentials and profile. Secondly is the local company's performance and number of staff. So looking at the candidate's profile, they will look at your age, your nationality, your highest qualification, including which university you graduated from, your work experience, and if your salary meets the minimum industry benchmark. As of today, MOM's minimum qualifying salary for AP holders is $5,000 for those who are not in the financial services sector and minimum $5,500 in the financial services sector. From the company's perspective, the company needs to be performing adequately well in terms of its revenue, and it also depends on the total number of employees they have in the company. If you have less than 25 employees in the company, you will not be subjected to the diversity and support for local employment under the campus framework. What your company can do is you can actually use the enhanced self-assessment tool provided by MOM to gauge if the foreign candidate you want to apply qualifies for an employment pass. And that's all for the top 10 frequently asked questions about Singapore work passes on the internet currently. Of course, there could have been questions that we haven't addressed, and you also couldn't find the answers on the internet as well. So what you want to do is to leave them in the comments section below, and if there have been enough questions, we may also just make an episode specially just for you. Thank you for joining me today, and as always, for more information, you can always visit our website tip.com.sg, or even better, you can go and schedule a one-on-one consultation with our consultants to have a personalized solution to your immigration needs in Singapore. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in our next episode. Bye!